Hi everyone, I'm sitting here with a blanket and a hot water bottle and it's freezing cold and I'm about to record this video around the solstice, which for me will be a winter solstice, which will be the same for everyone in the southern hemisphere, and for those in the northern hemisphere it will be the summer solstice. So the summer solstice is when you have the longest day and the shortest night. And it's opposite here in the southern hemisphere where we will have the longest night and the shortest day. And then we'll start moving back towards spring. And in the northern hemisphere, moving towards fall or autumn. Now, what on earth does this have to do with chronic fatigue, burnout, adrenal fatigue, chronic exhaustion? Well, the thing is that we have most of our health issues, many of our health issues, have a lot to do with disconnection. We have disconnected in so many ways from what I'm going to call the feminine energy. The feminine energy refers to the body, it refers to nature and the earth, it refers to emotions, intuition, creativity. So can you see already how these are not very highly valued in many of our cultures? Instead, we tend to value the more masculine way of doing things, but actually the masculine energy is also good. We need that. We need masculine and feminine, but we've tended towards a more distorted version of this masculine energy, which is very much around always needing to know things, very intellectual. It's around separation from the body, being in the head, and managing, being in control of everything. It's about motion and movement and top-down control and rigidity and conformity. So as you can hear, that's not necessarily a bad thing. We need some of that, but we've tended to go to an extreme. And as a result, we have massively separated from nature and from our bodies. And it actually wasn't that long ago in our history that we had a deep connection to nature. If you've ever heard of the almanac would be the book of data related to when the sun rises and sets, or when the moon rises and sets, what the different lunar phases are, or moon phases, the tides, the seasons, etc. And the farmers planted according to the almanac. They planted according to different lunar cycles. The seasons impacted their activities massively. Spiritual gatherings and ceremonies and events were filled with ritual that was related to natural cycles and rhythms. In fact, this is still the case in many religions. And I only found out a couple of years ago that Easter will always be on the first Sunday after the first full moon, after the equinox. In the southern hemisphere, that would be the spring equinox, the autumn equinox. So even, that, which Easter's lost a lot of its roots. It's become, for my children, it's largely around Easter eggs and to some degree around the actual Christian aspect of it. But it was actually initially our religious and spiritual celebrations had a lot also to do with where the sun and the moon was in the sky and what season it was, because we have fundamental, deep relationship to the earth. Our bodies are constantly regulated by nature. Our hormones, particularly through the pineal and pituitary gland, change with light and with temperature. And these determine how much energy we have, how much we should be resting and not resting. But the more distorted masculine energy means that we don't do much resting. We're often in action, in doing mode. And there's not much of that feminine surrender and rest and being in the body and listening to what the body needs. So what happens is that back in the day, again, when it was dark, there was only natural light, maybe firelight, red light, none of this artificial white light that we have now. And so when the hormones would then shift to tell the body that we were tired, we would have gone to sleep. And in winter, we would have slept longer and woken up with the sun, which happened to be later in the day, and gone to sleep earlier the evening before. So we have a nice long rest. Now it's like, let's try and get our bare minimum in every night. We have tended to try and avoid winter and avoid nighttime, the darkness. And these are both the more feminine energy. It's the energy of rest. It's the energy of being in the body, of shutting down the head, of losing control, right? Because when we sleep, when we rest, sometimes we're not as much in the head. We're not as controlled, because a lot of why we're in our head is because we're trying to control things. And it can be scary to be in the body. Many of us feel a deep discomfort being still. We feel that, I work with so many clients who, when I help them to be still, they realize that it actually feels like they have this constant sort of whirring energy, because the body just does not know how to rest. Many of us have a nervous system template that is set up here in a kind of chronic low-grade fight-flight response, which is the more masculine or distorted masculine energy. That means that we want to always be doing and be busy, and it's very difficult to settle, to rest, to be still. What that means is that the body cannot rejuvenate, it cannot fully recover. There's this constant cumulative buildup of low-grade chronic stress and the impact that has on the body. So when we are stressed, it impacts multiple systems in the body. Our detox pathways are compromised. Our digestion is compromised. We cannot sleep as well. So then we don't. When we rest, when we rest is when a lot of our organs and endocrines actually reset and recover. It can literally impact our breathing rhythms, our blood pressure, and many things that are deeply related to our overall health, so that they're not at the level, they don't come back down to the level they're supposed to be at when we're in a rested state. Everything stays in this chronic state of disequilibrium, which is fine to be in for short periods of time. So we want to be in this summer energy, this daytime energy of being able to do, and of being busy and being social and networking and being out there and achieving and succeeding. And we don't have the bodies for that. We are not wired that way. We are wired to be what our ancestors were. We are wired to honor and acknowledge the winter and the nighttime, and to deeply connect with what our bodies need and to allow that. But time and again now, we just override it because there's a sense of too many pressures, too much overwhelm. There's this, often we tie our value and worth to what we manage and can't manage. There's a lot of trauma in our society. So that trauma means it's difficult for the body to rest. That's what often creates that nervous system template that I was talking about, so that we just cannot rest. There's so many reasons why our nervous systems are just not able to allow us to go into a rested state where we can heal. And we cannot overcome chronic fatigue and burnout and adrenal fatigue, etc., if we do not help the nervous system or choose to consciously create space for the nervous system to come back to a healthy, balanced state regularly. Okay, we cannot overcome chronic fatigue and exhaustion and depletion if we do not allow for regular resting of the nervous system. And that's not just going to happen on its own, because we are so wired to ignore the more rested times and states in our lives. And in a lunar cycle, by the way, that would be the new moon and the waning moon. So there's 2 weeks in a lunar cycle, which are also more of a time where we would have less energy. And again, we function 24/7, 365, the same way every day. We expect the same output from our bodies, despite the fact that our bodies are not wired to be able to do that. So what does this mean for the solstice? I'd like you to just take some time to consider how you can be a little bit more connected to the natural cycles and rhythms. Even if it is just stopping for a moment and imagining your connection to the earth or to the planet, to the moon, to the sun, and just letting this sink in that we have a profound connection. The other thing about this is that the planet, the earth, provides vital life force energy to us. And we cannot receive life force energy unless we're plugged in. It's just like a socket and a plug point, right? Firstly, it's got to be plugged in, and secondly, it's actually turned on as well. Some of us are plugged in and not turned on. Many of us are not even plugged in. We're so busy on the move that we don't stop, plug in and recharge. How can you start to introduce more of this? So for this solstice, for those of you going into the winter, those of you in the winter solstice, how can you hibernate a little bit more? Just a little bit more, just 5% more than you would normally do. How can you maybe add half an hour more to your sleep? In what ways can you introduce a little bit more rest and surrender? And if this is really difficult for you, I'd like to encourage you to sit still and feel what it feels like when you need to stop. And just bring some conscious awareness to what happens in your body that makes you not want to stop. If you're in summer, of course there's this call to celebrate, to be expansive, to network, to be more busy. See how you can break that with moments of rest in your day, in your week. So I always say to people, how can you bring rest into a day? So I like to start off my day with a stillness practice of some sort. And then after lunch, around 3 p.m., there can be a dip often in the circadian rhythm. So can you maybe take 10 minutes and just do a breathing exercise or just rest in some way to break that cumulative stress? So how can you bring a break into your day? How can you bring a break into your week, which will usually for many people be the weekend? How can you do that properly? How can you bring a break into your month? For women, I'd suggest that if you naturally menstruate, if you're not on medication, that rest needs to come when you're menstruating. For those who do not menstruate, that rest is ideal when it is new moon and just running and coming up to new moon. And then how can you bring rest into the year? And that's going to be around your seasons and honoring when you need more rest. What many of you are going to find as you go into summer now is that if you didn't create a foundation of rest in winter, you're going to be very depleted by the time you get to spring and summer already. Okay, and you may find now that as you push things in the summer energy, because you haven't got a good foundation of that hibernation that should have happened in winter, that you end up burning out in summer. I hope you can take something of value from this. It's a very different way of thinking and doing things, and many of us are exceptionally resistant to it, right? Because we feel like, how can we keep up with the demands? And there's just too much, right? The crazy thing that I found is that when I do live this way, I've actually introduced more spaciousness into my life. And I seem to get more done when I do things, if I do allow myself to rest. Doesn't make logical sense because we factor everything by time. Well, if I take away time, I'm going to have less time. But actually, this is the feminine quality of time. When we rest and we're still, we create spaciousness. It's not that distorted masculine linear time. And so I encourage you to just give it a try. And even just a small way, like I said, 5% more rest than normal. I'd love to hear your feedback on this. And happy solstice, everyone. Keep listening to your bodies. They know exactly what to do if you just take that moment to tune in and listen. All right, take care. Bye.